Hello, and welcome to another episode of, what are we calling this?
I don't know, 20 questions with Paul Isaacs.
Well, this is this particular episode, 20 questions with Paul Isaacs of Sound Devices. Thanks for tuning in. To my left is Nick Huston, sales manager of Gotham Sound. I'm Peter Schneider, and to my right, virtually, is Paul Isaacs of
Hello there.
Sound Devices.
Vegetable, animal, or mineral?
All three, I think. I'll be mineral.
Vegetable.
And I'm the animal. That's what my
well,
wife
we
says.
knew that. That's right. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you bet. This is exciting. We asked you to specifically talk about the Sound Devices CL12.
Very excited to.
So I guess let's start off with a little bit of an open question. Why does this product exist?
Why does the CL12 exist?
Yes.
Well, I think many of the listeners here will be familiar with our 6 series of mixer recorders, with the latest addition to that series being the 688. And we were finding that a lot of users now are wanting to use that 688 as much over the shoulder as on a cart. And, the ability to control a mix via linear faders is obviously such a high demand and requirement, for mixing on a cart, for really having control of balance, that we felt this was like a natural addition to the 688. And what this enables us to do, because since it's a controller which connects to the 688 simply via one cable, it makes it easy to transition from bag to cart and vice versa. And many users are needing to do that now. There might be a fixed scene at one point where they're on a cart recording like a scripted scene, and then there might be a quick transition to an in-car shot or a shot where the talent is walking down the street and they need to be very mobile. So to have, I call this like a hybrid system, a system that can as be at home on a cart as in a bag. And really the CL12 makes that possible.
No, I agree completely. I think that the lines for production mixer, no matter what budget of project they're working on, it's no longer like a big deal to have to go over the shoulder at a moment's notice.
Right.
I filled in for a mixer on like a pretty decent budget, had to be like $50 million budget, something like that. And yeah, I mean, if I wanted to get sound on a shot, even though there wasn't a lot of supercritical dialogue on it, I had to go over the shoulder. It wasn't practical to schlep the whole cart.
Exactly.
And there's more and more shots now where it's just expected, no matter what the budget is, that if the mixer's going to roll sound, they have to be able to be mobile, super mobile. So I really like this idea that the CL12 can make something go from over the shoulder to on a cart, effectively with one cable.
Effectively, yeah. So this really works very well. And with the CL12 being a cart-based mixer, we really wanted to design it in such a way that it would allow the production sound mixer to really be the creative person that they are, and bringing out all the key functions onto a nicely laid out control surface. So we spent a huge amount of time really thinking very carefully about the layout of the controls, the quality of the faders, the mixing experience itself. And I think we've pretty much got there with this. We're very proud of this product. I can talk you through some more of the details of it if you like.
Sure. So, I mean, the first thing that in case it's not obvious to people, is no audio passes through it.
That's right. It's purely a controller, and it connects to the 688 via a single USB cable.
So it connects in the back here. Is the actual USB input, and you'll see there's a couple other things here for a keyboard and also for a light, which is pretty cool. One question I had, just because we're here, is the DC boost. Is that for if you're using a light, or you just want to give the 688 a rest, or what's
so yeah, the DC boost is simply there to be able to connect a USB external 5-volt supply, and really that's purely there to enable the CL12 to drive, say, higher power USB keyboards out there. Some keyboards require higher power, like back illuminated ones. Also, it could be used to drive the LEDs on the CL12 to a brighter level. So if you're in bright sunlight, you may want to do that, and it gives the LEDs an extra kick up the arse type thing.
Very nice.
So, as I said, there's a single umbilical USB connection between the 688 and the CL12, and that provides both the control data and the power. And nothing is required beyond that. There is another connection, a 1/4 inch to 1/4 inch connection, which connects the headphone output of the 688 to the input of the CL12. And that basically allows a sound mixer to plug his headphones into the front side of the CL12. There's a 1/4 inch and a 3.5 mil socket on the front side. So it's a convenience thing. It's not mandatory. You could just plug your headphones directly to the headphone port on the 688. But this just means you're not having cables laced around the side of the unit. So the CL12 quite nicely fits, its width fits nicely within a typical cart rack width, and it's been designed with that in mind. And we spend a lot of time sort of deliberating about the width. We want it to be narrow enough and small enough to fit on even the smallest of carts, even like the PSC Euro cart, for instance. But we didn't want the fader spacing to be too narrow. So I think we've got a really nice balance where the fingers fall really nicely in a natural position
I think that's
to mix on, and it's not laboured at all. The other thing about those faders, one of the key things, was to provide a quality mixing experience. Now, this is where we come to, might as well talk about the two different models of the CL12. There's a standard model. Both models use 100mm faders, 12 of them. There's a standard model which uses faders, but then there's also an Alaya model which uses Penny and Giles 100mm faders, which, notorious for being the very smoothest of operational faders, and it just really does give a great mixing experience. Very smooth to operate. The standard faders are fine too, but you can really tell the difference when you compare the two side by side.
Yeah, I've done that. I can vouch for that.
Another obviously key thing about fader mixing is latency, and a problem that sometimes is regarded as synonymous with controllers is fader latency.
What does that mean?
It means when you make a change to a fade again, there can be a slight lag or delay between the movement, the physical movement, and the actual audio change in level, which can be exceedingly off-putting when you're mixing. So we went out of our way to ensure that that is unnoticeable. I mean, it's really low. I mean, we're talking about around the 100 millisecond mark and less. I mean, it's totally unnoticeable. So you can go from totally closed on a fader to totally open, and the audio follows without any lag. It's imperceivable. So we spend a lot of time making sure that we got that right. And that's even the case, even if you're riding all 12 faders simultaneously. It does feel good, and I really highly recommend that people just try it. It's very much personal taste mixing, but we think we've got it right. We think we've got it right to suit the masses.
That's great. And so tell me about some of these other controls here.
Okay, so one of the major features that we've added to the CL12, and it's a feature that doesn't exist on a standalone 688, and that is EQ. We've added 3-band EQ. So we have an LF section, a mid-frequency section, and a high-frequency section. And the LF range goes from 60 hertz to 300 hertz. The mid-frequency goes from 400 hertz to 6 kilohertz, and the high-frequency from 8 kilohertz up to 15 kilohertz. You can customize your Q factor, which adjusts the band the width of the band of frequencies you're adjusting. There's a plus or minus 15 dB gain adjustment for each frequency.
And this EQ is per input?
Each channel can have its own individual frequency adjustment. So we feel that this is ideal to handle most of the requirements of a production sound mixer's EQ requirements. If you need to boost a little bit of treble on a muffled lavalier, you can do that. If you need to roll off a bit of low frequency or add a little bit of warmth, you can. It works really well.
And so all of the EQ is sort of controlled from here, and it depends on which channel you're selecting.
Correct. So it works like very similar to like a typical FAT channel on a modern digital console, where you select a channel and then there'll be a FAT channel with a whole number of parameters and knobs for controlling various parameters of that channel, and then you can make all your channel adjustments there. Now, the parameters that we can adjust as part of that FAT channel, it's not just EQ. You can also do your output routing, input to output routing. We can arm a channel. We can name a channel. We can apply high-pass filters. We can apply phase reverse. So it's very versatile. And that FAT channel enables you to quickly move between channels and make those adjustments. Not only that, there are many of the functions you can control as a group as well. So you can select multiple channels by holding one select key, then selecting multiple others.
Oh, great.
And they will all highlight you. And when they're all highlighted, any adjustment you're making from the FAT channel will affect all channels. Now, there are some exceptions there. You can't adjust the EQ for all multiple channels. And you cannot name multiple channels as a part of a select group, which obviously makes sense because generally you're just naming one channel at a time.
Sure. Why not EQ though?
It's a limitation of the hardware, and we believe that this is the main requirement, to individually set the EQ of individual lavaliers. Besides that, every talent's voice generally has different characteristics, so typically you're making slight differences in EQ adjustments per channel. I'm sort of trying to mind map here because I don't have a CL12 in front of me, but on the you can see in the center of the CL12 there's 4 meter banks, L, R, X1 and X2. Now obviously these provide metering for the mix buses, the main mix buses, LR through X2. X3 through X6, those other auxiliary buses, you can meter those via the 688 LCD itself.
And here, tell me about, so I see where the channel selectors are, I see where PFL are, I see where the faders are, and I even see where the output levels are. How does one adjust, if I needed to adjust the input gain on a preamp, how do I do that?
Are you talking about the trim level?
Yes.
Okay, that's a good question. Now, pretty much 99% of the features you'd require you can access directly from that CL12. Trims have to be adjusted from the 688 front panel itself, which is typically within arm's reach because it's sitting on a shelf directly in front of you.
It'd be like this, sort of.
Correct.
Yeah.
So you have access to all 12 inputs, trim controls there, and they're easily within reach. So, yeah. And the reason for that is because they are actually analog pots. They cannot be digitally controlled. Right. But we felt that that was a pretty fair compromise because they are physically easy to reach. And the majority of the time you're controlling faders from the CL12. So you've got this balance. Occasionally you reach over in front of you to tweak a trim.
Sure.
But most of the time you're riding the faders.
Right.
So when you actually connect the CL12 to the 688, this is probably worth mentioning. The the large faders 1 through 6 on the 688 are disabled because obviously now they're being controlled by the faders on the CL12.
Makes sense.
The faders for input 7 through 12, the mini faders on the 688, they become your trims for input 7 through 12. So then you've got this whole bank of trims on that bottom row of the 688. Now, the nice thing to know about this, and this is very important, is that if you were to accidentally unplug that cable, the USB cable between the 688 and the CL12, there's absolutely nothing to be concerned about. There'll be no sudden change in level. The mix levels will all stay the same. What will happen is when the units are unplugged, a message will appear on the front of the 688 which says CL12 unplugged. Do you want to continue unplugged? And you either select yes or no, pressing the encoder. If it was an accident, then obviously you wouldn't want to do that. It'd plug straight back in, and then operation will just continue as normal as if nothing happened. No glitches on the audio at all. If you choose that you do need to run over the shoulder, you just hit OK in that message, and then you're off and running. And at that point, the faders on the 688 will take over.
Yeah, that sounds perfect. Now, does the CL12 only work with the 688, or will it work with other recorders on the 6 series?
Currently only works with the 688. We are planning to add support for the 664 in the first quarter of 16. And perhaps the 6332.
Okay.
So yeah, that's coming soon. That's coming soon.
And one thing that caught my eye was the number of user assignable buttons, and those are on the right-hand side.
Yeah, now this adds a huge amount of power to the CL12 combination with the 688. You have, obviously you've got your transport controls, the stop and record function in the top right-hand corner. We decided that we're going to place them a little bit further away from the bottom of the CL12. If you remember the 788 and the CL9, we had quite a few users using that combination, and some of them got into a situation where they'd accidentally hit the stop or the record button because it was very close to the bottom of the unit, so we decided to move them a little bit further up. They're still very easily within reach, but there's no way you're accidentally going to stop a recording or accidentally start a recording. Below that, we have there's a bank of 5 buttons which we call the channel select tools, and these are operate on the currently selected input channels. So when you hit a select key for an input, these buttons to come into operation, and you have your arm, you have your ability to turn a channel on and off, you have the ability to name a channel and set your high pass filter and low pass. Below that, we have what we call the metadata section. And this really does provide a very fast way for entering metadata on the fly. Here you can just hit the scene button and it will bring up a virtual keyboard on the 688 LCD, and you can type in immediately your scene name, hit the scene button again, you're straight into record. You can do this during stop or record. And likewise, you can edit take, number, you can enter notes and phrases. You can even set take as false or circle a take, and you can even increment the scene from there, so it's very intuitive. And when used in conjunction with a USB keyboard plugged into the back panel of the CL12, you've probably got the fastest way of metadata entry that there's ever been on a production sound system. It's really fast. Below that, we've got this really cool section. It's another shortcut section. 3 buttons, U1 to U3, and these can be programmed to many different functions. They can be shortcuts. They can be programmed to be shortcuts to certain menus, or shortcuts to particular functions like activating the slate or the tone, or the play function, or fast forward or rewind, many other functions. These are programmed from within a new menu called the CL12 menu, and I haven't actually mentioned this yet, but when you do connect a CL12 to the 688, a new menu appears called the CL12 menu, and within that menu you can customize many features. Your user 1 to user 3 buttons, as I've just mentioned.
Yeah.
But also things like your EQ parameters, Q factor, whether you're working with shelving or peaking type filters. You can customize whether your EQ is pre-fade or post-fade. We didn't even talk about that before, but we provide both options there.
So somebody can record the isolated tracks with the EQ baked in?
Yes, so user can choose to EQ or not EQ the raw ISOs. So that's key. So that menu provides access to those more CL12-centric functions. Below the U1 and U3 buttons, we've got 2 short buttons. One's the timecode menu, timecode jam menu, which is very cool for quickly just checking your timecode drift and setting up and jamming there. Yeah. The next, there's also a shortcut to the super slot. Now, I don't want to talk too much about that now. That's a separate video or talk altogether. But that's for accessing the SL6 accessory, the wireless and powering distribution accessory that we supply, for accessing the receiver overview page. So you can very quickly check your RF level from your up to 6 receiver channels, transmitter battery levels, setting your RF, your receiver frequency levels, and various parameters to do with the SL6. So that's pretty cool.
So basically the entire cart can be integrated through this panel. Absolutely.
And so you could run with a complete system here. You could have a CL12 in front of you. You could have a 688 with a CL6 beneath that and an SL6 fixed above that. Then you have the full Monty of interfaces, which is pretty cool.
Now the tell me about those. So the CL12 is the control surface. The SL6 is the wireless interface. And is there another piece to the Sound Devices universe in terms of accessories?
Not at this point. Well, apart from the CL6, which I just mentioned, which is really a solution for over-the-shoulder mixing of all 12 channels.
You could absolutely have the CL6 attached to it.
Yes, but what happens is when you connect your CL12, the CL6 faders will be disabled as well, because it's all now being controlled from the CL12. And effectively, the CL6 powers down to save power.
Great.
And as soon as you unplug that USB cable between CL12 and 688, the CL6 will come to life along with the 688. The SL6 will always be active.
That's great.
Just running through the remainder of those buttons on the device, on the CL12, below the super slot and the timecode buttons, we have the dedicated return buttons for monitoring return 1, 2, A, B, and C, and the COM return. Very fast access there. And beneath that, we have a COM section, COM1 and COM2. Now, users of the 688 will be familiar with only one COM circuit for having for private communications. With the CL12, an additional COM circuit is provided, so you could talk to 2 separate boom ops, for instance, or you could talk to both simultaneously by activating both buttons at the same time.
Physically, where do those connections show up?
So basically, when you activate a COM, depending on your auxiliary output routing, so you have 6 outputs, X1 through X6.
Yeah.
If you go to the output routing menus for each of those auxiliary outputs, in each of those menus you'll find 2 fields called COM1 and COM2, and whichever one you've activated for each output is the output that the COM signal will be routed out of. So yeah, that's a pretty powerful system for diverse communications, and covers a whole range of needs.
Cool.
And finally, beneath that we have the meters and the menu button. And these pretty much just duplicate the 2 buttons on the front of the 688. Right. So for toggling through your various meter views and for accessing menu screens. Now, the nice thing about those user buttons is really it's almost like limitless possibilities on how you want to customize the box.
Sure.
For instance, I have my X3 routing menu on one of those user buttons because I want to go in there and keep toggling what I'm outputting of the X3 TA3 output as a feed. So to be able to get to that really quickly really is a bonus.
What has the feedback been like from the field? Are there any features that you guys are considering coming out with soon?
Well, the
can
feedback
talk
from the
about?
field has been great post shipping, but it really came as no surprise to us because the CL12 was a hugely in demand piece of hardware that was requested of us for a long time. And, we were very quiet about it, but, we knew that it was going to be a very popular piece because we had so many users asking for it. So when it started shipping, we had some very happy users out there. The reports that come back from the field, I would just say go and visit our Facebook group page and see some of these rather than me repeat them in my own words. There's some great feedback saying that really it's just completed the user experience and it's taken it to a new level, and a level which is almost like a dream, especially for those people who've been looking for this hybrid system, who need to be able to go from bag to cart quickly. It really is the perfect solution for that.
Yeah. Yeah, and it answers a number of questions and uses that I think came about from the CL9, for example.
Yeah, we learned a lot from that, and we've taken it to a much higher level.
Yeah.
And just the experience of those Penny and Giles faders makes all the difference. From my point of view, it's like a no-brainer which one to go for. It's
for us too. I mean, Nick, what would you say?
We've sold mostly the Elias, but actually one question that I've gotten from people who, really this is kind of a nice instant solution to have, 12 channels on a cart or over the shoulder, is are the faders upgradable? Is it something that you could do later on, obviously at a premium?
No.
Not at all.
No,
good. I said the right
you
thing.
pretty much have to make the decision that you want to start with. So that's the way it is. Yeah.
Got it.
For me, it's a no-brainer. If your daily life is in front of a mixer, and that's your artistic, creative role, then you want the best tool for the job. I'm a musician. I play the piano and the keyboard, and I know that I can achieve so much more creatively when I'm sitting in front of, the highest quality instrument. And I think most guitarists would say the same. If they have a great guitar, it inspires them. So that's just my perspective. Having said that, the Hill 12 standard is still a great mixing experience. It provides all that immediate control. So it still works fine.
I want to ask you sort of a almost philosophical question about control surfaces. Are there any important differences functionally between a control surface and a regular analog panel, or a mixer, a standalone mixer, I should say? Anything that we should be telling customers, the three of us, that are considering, like, let's say they're looking at a used Cooper. I mean, that might be one thing to consider, is that they're...
Well, you're cracking up a little bit. We've gone a bit rustly there.
Oh, I'm sorry. I will.
I've lost you entirely now.
Oh, no. Right? How are we doing?
Did you sign language?
Can you hear?
You're back. You're back
that?
again.
All right, there we go. Good, because I had no idea what I was saying there. What are some of the
Is your battery dying, or?
I don't know. Let's take a look. No, we're good. We're good to the control room. Yeah, let's check.
Okay, it's clean now. It's clean now.
I think you did it.
I did it.
Wow,
Great.
you're a genius. Yeah.
8 years in the field. What can you say?
Okay, so you're saying, is there any philosophical differences in terms of operation between a controller and an analog
a standalone
console?
mixer?
Yeah, that's That's a difficult one, I think. At the end of the day, in my opinion, mixing is mixing. And if your main remit here is to create a mix, both do the same, both achieve the same. I guess there's this whole argument that a dedicated analog console is going to be more reliable than a controller because the controller is dependent, on the actual recorder for its operation. But in reality, it transpires that there's no proof of that.
I think there's the flip side could be argued successfully too. There's more interconnections that could go wrong with a dedicated mixer. I mean, one of the things that I really like about this is the elegance of the connectivity.
Yeah, and this whole hybrid philosophy of going from bag to cart wouldn't work very smoothly, going from console to from cart to over the shoulder. And
we used to do it. It just meant unplugging a boatload of connections.
And if you think of
bag.
Or second bag, yeah.
If you think about it, using an analog console as well, it doesn't really allow you to get into the heart of the DSP of the recorder. And with a controller, it allows us to do really neat things like metadata control and far more flexible routing actually within the device. You wouldn't really be able to achieve that easily from an analog console. You'd have to have a dedicated data interconnection somehow. So you're talking about then another umbilical. So it can start to become quite messy. So this is a much needed solution, and I think it works out that the footprint can become smaller, and also the powering consumption needs become less. I mean, this is all critical stuff. When you're setting up an efficient cart-based system.
Yes, agreed. Anything to add about this? Anything you want to add about the 6 series ecosystem?
No, really. I think what we have here is a truly powerful ecosystem, and the CL12 really does complete that picture. Now we have the CL12, the SL6, the 688, and the CL6. I mean, I don't really think you're missing anything at that point.
Yeah.
So.
Nick, what do we sell? What's the price?
So the standard CL12 is $1,995, and then the Elia is $2,995. And in addition to the P&G faders, the Elia also comes in 2 colors, which people get very excited about: blonde and red. And they also give the black side as well, if that's what you
hand carved side panels.
Yeah, they're beautiful.
If you do want to preserve them, then you can swap them out for the included aluminum panels. So,
Where is it made?
At home here in Wisconsin, the Amish are our good friends out here, and they are literally hand carved, so that personalized for the end user.
Now, I've been to Wisconsin, and I'm going to go out on a limb here. I hope you don't mind. I'm going to go out on a little bit of a limb. I've been to Wisconsin, and you don't speak like you're from Wisconsin.
No, I've been listening to these Rosetta Stone, How to Speak English.
You've done a fabulous job.
I'm a true cheesehead.
Well, tell me, how did you come to Sound Devices? Where did you come from?
Well, I took the long route round. I'm originally from England, from London in England, and I went from there to New Zealand, which is literally the opposite side of the world. I spent about 7 or 8 years out there, and started to do some contract work with Sound Devices while I was there, and then they offered me a job here in Wisconsin, and I couldn't refuse to work for such a great company. So I moved out to Wisconsin about 7 years ago. It's been a great experience. The only thing I've got to get used to is still the weather. But fortunately, El Nino is making that more bearable this year. So
yeah, the upside of global warming, I suppose.
I'm all for global warming.
Excellent. Before we go, we should see if there's any questions from people watching.
Sure.
I don't see any questions. Paul, thank you very, very much.
And thank you guys for inviting me to speak. I hope I didn't rabble on too much.
No.
But yeah, it's great. And let's do it again sometime.
Yes, absolutely. All right, so we are next time, we're going to do audio bags. That's Tuesday, December 8th. Audio bags roundup, it's all in the bag. Archives, vimeo.com/Gotham Sound. And as always, your ideas and suggestions to info@gothamsound.com. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Nick.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, everybody.
Take care.
You too.
Bye-bye.